The thing about parties at our house is that they always end badly. Not drunk uncle falls into the pool badly, but more like watching your marriage implode in real time badly. I should have seen it coming when Jessa insisted on inviting half the neighborhood, including that smug bastard Dennis Sloan from her office. My name is Mason Archer, and I'm 43 years old with the cynicism of a man who's seen too much. 20 years in the Army taught me how to read people, and 10 years as a paralegal taught me how to destroy them legally. My wife Jessa thinks I'm just some washed-up soldier who shuffles papers for lawyers. She's about to learn how wrong she is. Mason, honey, can you get more ice? Jessa's voice carried that fake sweetness she used when she wanted something. She was holding court by the kitchen island, surrounded by her usual crowd of admirers. Dennis stood closest to her, his hand resting possessively on the granite countertop, wedding ring conveniently absent. Sure thing, sweetheart, I replied, noting how Dennis's eyes followed the curve of Jessa's dress. In the Army, we called that reconnaissance. In civilian life, we call it adultery. Our house was packed with about 30 people, all laughing too loud and drinking too much. Riley, our 19-year-old daughter, was home from college and working the room like a politician. Owen, 16 and surly, had retreated to his room after making the minimum required appearance. Smart kid. I grabbed another bag of ice from the garage freezer, taking my time. Through the window, I could see Tasha, Jessa's best friend and professional gossip distributor, gesturing wildly as she told some story to a captive audience. Everything felt wrong tonight, like the air before a thunderstorm. When I returned, the party had reached that dangerous level of intoxication where people start saying what they really think. Jessa was giggling at something Dennis whispered in her ear, her hand briefly touching his arm. The gesture was intimate, practiced. How long had I been missing these signals? Mason, Tasha called out, her voice already slurred. We were just talking about how lucky Jessa is to have such a devoted husband. Lucky, I repeated, setting down the ice with more force than necessary. That's one word for it. The conversation continued around me, but I was focused on Jessa's behavior. She was performing, I realized. Every laugh, every gesture, every sideways glance at Dennis was calculated. This wasn't the woman I'd married 20 years ago. This was someone else entirely. You know what's funny? Jessa suddenly announced to the group, her voice carrying that dangerous edge alcohol brings out. I was just thinking about all the men in my life. The room went quiet. Dennis shifted uncomfortably. Tasha's eyes went wide. Jessa, I said quietly. Maybe we should? No, let me finish, she interrupted, waving her wine glass. I mean, look around this room. Really look. She paused dramatically, scanning the faces of our guests. My military training kicked in, cataloging every expression, every micro-reaction. 3 men looked guilty, 2 looked confused. Dennis looked terrified. Every guy here has been with me, she giggled, the words hanging in the air like poison gas. The silence that followed was deafening. You could hear the ice maker cycling in the kitchen, the distant sound of Owen's music upstairs, the collective intake of breath from 30 shocked people. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger, not yet. Something worse. Clarity. Cool, I said, my voice steady as granite. That'll help during the divorce. Jessa's wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor. Red wine spread across the boards like blood. Her face went from flushed to pale in seconds. It was a joke, she said quickly, too quickly. Mason, please, it was just a stupid joke. You have to believe me. But I was already walking away, my mind shifting into the analytical mode that had kept me alive in 2 combat deployments. The guest list, the seating arrangements, the way certain men had avoided eye contact with me all evening. The puzzle pieces were falling into place, and the picture they formed was ugly. Behind me, I heard Jessa trying to laugh it off, telling everyone she'd had too much wine, that she was just being silly. But the damage was done. The truth had a way of revealing itself, even when wrapped in alcohol and nervous laughter. And I went to my home office and closed the door. 20 years of marriage, 2 children, a mortgage, shared dreams and disappointments, all of it potentially built on lies. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop, muscle memory guiding my fingers to the family cloud account where all our photos were stored. Time to do what I did best, investigate. The beauty of being married to someone for 20 years is that you know all their passwords. The curse is finding out why you shouldn't. I started with the party photos Jessa had been taking all evening, automatically uploaded to our shared cloud storage. 37 pictures, each one embedded with metadata that most people don't even know exists. Location data, timestamps, even the device orientation. It's amazing what you can learn when you know how to look. Photo number 12, Jessa and Dennis by the back door, timestamp 8:47 p.m. I remembered that moment. She'd said she was going outside for air. He'd followed 30 seconds later, claiming he needed to make a call. The metadata showed they were both outside for exactly 11 minutes. Photo number 23. Group shot by the fireplace, timestamp 9:15 p.m. I could see 3 men standing behind Jessa, all with their hands positioned just a little too familiarly. Brad Morrison from down the street, his palm resting on her lower back. Kevin Walsh from her yoga class, his arm around her waist. And Dennis, of course, his hand on her shoulder with his thumb tracing small circles. I'd been a fool, but I was a well-trained fool with excellent attention to detail. My phone buzzed. Text from Dwayne, my old army buddy turned private investigator. Party looked intense. Everything okay? I typed back, need to talk. Tomorrow morning. Roger that. The house had finally gone quiet. The last guests had left around midnight, and Jessa had gone straight to bed without saying a word to me. Riley had driven back to her dorm, and Owen was asleep. I had the night to myself and a mystery to solve. I pulled up our joint bank statements, something I rarely bothered checking since Jessa handled most of the household finances. She made good money as an HR director, and I trusted her. Past tense being the operative phrase. What I found made my blood run cold. Venmo payments, dozens of them over the past 6 months. Small amounts, $50 to $100, coded with innocent descriptions. Yoga instructor to Kevin Walsh. Dog walking to Brad Morrison. Consulting to Dennis Sloan. We didn't have a dog. Jessa had never mentioned private yoga lessons, and Dennis worked in the same office she did. I cross-referenced the payment dates with Jessa's calendar, another shared account she'd forgotten I had access to. Every payment corresponded with a girls' night out, or working late entry. The pattern was clear, methodical, and absolutely damning. My wife wasn't just having affairs, she was paying for them. The realization hit me like a sniper's bullet. Jessa wasn't the victim of male attention. She was the orchestrator. She was funding her own infidelity, probably covering hotel rooms, dinners, whatever it took to maintain multiple relationships simultaneously. I opened a new document and started typing, my paralegal training taking over, date, time, evidence, cross-references. If this was going to court, I needed documentation that would hold up under scrutiny. At 3 a.m, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Jessa appeared in the doorway, wearing her old college t-shirt and a guilty expression. "Mason, what are you doing up?" "Research," I said without looking away from the screen. "About what?" "Yoga instructors, dog walkers, consultants." I finally turned to face her. Interesting how expensive those services have gotten. Her face went through a series of micro-expressions. Confusion, recognition, fear, and finally, defiance. "I don't know what you're implying, but..." "I'm not implying anything, Jessa. I'm stating facts. Would you like to hear them?" She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking smaller. "It's not what you think. What I think is that my wife of 20 years has been systematically lying to me while conducting multiple affairs funded by our joint accounts. What I think is that tonight's little announcement wasn't alcohol talking, it was guilt finally finding a voice." "Mason, please, let me explain." "Explain what? The Venmo payments? The calendar entries? The metadata from tonight's photos showing you disappearing with 3 different men at various times?" The word metadata seemed to break something in her. She started crying, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of someone who'd been caught. "You don't understand," she sobbed. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. It just evolved." "Evolved?" I stood up, my voice remaining steady despite the rage building in my chest. "Like evolution, you mean? Random mutations that somehow resulted in you screwing half the neighborhood? Don't be crude." "Crude?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Jessa, you announced to a room full of people that you'd slept with multiple men, and you're worried about me being crude?" She had no answer for that. We stood there in silence, 20 years of marriage dissolving between us like sugar and acid. "I want you to leave," I said finally. "This is my house too." "Actually, it's not. Check the deed. My name only, remember? We did it that way for tax purposes when I left the Army." The color drained from her face. "You can't be serious. Deadly serious. Pack a bag. Go stay with Tasha or Dennis or whoever's turn it is in your rotation. But I want you out of my house by morning." She opened her mouth to argue, then seemed to think better of it. "What about the kids? What about them? Riley's at college, and Owen's old enough to understand that his mother is a liar and a cheat." "You bastard." "Maybe. But I'm a bastard who kept his wedding vows." She left without another word. I heard her moving around upstairs, drawers opening and closing, the sound of a suitcase being packed. 20 minutes later, the front door slammed shut and her car pulled out of the driveway. I sat back down at my computer and continued documenting. By sunrise, I had a complete timeline of Jessa's affairs, financial records showing misuse of marital funds, and a plan for what came next. The house always wins, but only if you know how to play the game. Dwayne showed up at 8 a.m. sharp, carrying coffee and the grim expression of someone who'd seen this story before. He was built like a linebacker gone to seed, with graying hair and eyes that missed nothing. 10 years of private investigation work had given him a cynical edge that matched my own. "She's really gone?" he asked, settling into the kitchen chair Jessa used to occupy. "Packed and out by 6 this morning, probably at Dennis's place, though she's too smart to make it that obvious." "You want me to follow her?" I shook my head. "I want you to investigate her. All of them, actually. I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with before I make my next move." Dwayne pulled out a notebook, old school style. "Give me the names." Dennis Sloan works with Jessa at Morrison Industries. Kevin Walsh runs some kind of fitness consulting business. Brad Morrison, neighbor, works in real estate. Those are the 3 I'm certain about based on the financial records. "And you think there might be more?" "Last night she said every guy here." There were 15 men at that party. Dwayne, even accounting for hyperbole, were probably looking at more than 3. He whistled low. "That's not an affair, Mason. That's a hobby. Or a business model." I showed him the bank records, the Venmo transactions, the calendar correlations. His expression grew darker with each piece of evidence. "This is good work," he said finally. "Thorough. You could do my job." I learned from the best interrogators in the Army. Plus, 20 years of legal work teaches you how to build a case. "What's your end game here?" That was the question, wasn't it? What did I want? Revenge? Justice? Or just the satisfaction of watching my wife's carefully constructed lies collapse around her? "I want the truth. All of it. And then I want to make sure she never does this to anyone else." Dwayne nodded. "I'll start with the 3 you've identified. Background checks, financial records, phone records, if I can get them legally. Give me a week." After he left, I called in sick to work. I had personal time accumulated, and this qualified as a personal emergency. Then I drove to the office of Patricia Shin, the best divorce attorney in the city. I'd worked with her on several cases, and she had a reputation for being absolutely ruthless when the situation called for it. Her office was downtown, all glass and steel and intimidation. Patricia was in her 50s, impeccably dressed, with silver hair and the predatory smile of someone who enjoyed her work. "Mason Archer," she said, rising from behind her desk. "This is unexpected. Please sit." I laid out the entire situation, showing her the evidence I'd compiled. She listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. "This is quite thorough," she said when I finished. "Your wife made several critical errors. First, using joint accounts to fund her affairs. Second, creating a digital trail. Third, and most importantly, making that announcement in front of witnesses. Can we use it?" "Oh, we can absolutely use it. Adultery might not carry the same legal weight it once did, but financial fraud certainly does. She used marital assets to conduct extramarital affairs. That's grounds for a very favorable settlement." "I want more than favorable, Patricia. I want devastating." Her smile turned predatory. "Tell me what you have in mind." We spent the next 2 hours planning strategy. Patricia would file for divorce immediately, citing adultery and financial misconduct. We'd request a temporary restraining order preventing Jessa from accessing any joint accounts. We'd demand a full financial audit, which would reveal the extent of her spending on affairs, and we'd subpoena her phone records, which would provide additional evidence of her infidelity. "What about the children?" Patricia asked. "Riley's 19 and at college. She can make her own decisions about relationships with her mother. Owen's 16, old enough to understand what happened, but young enough that custody matters. I want primary custody." Given the evidence, that shouldn't be difficult. Courts don't look favorably on parents who use family resources to fund affairs. I left Patricia's office feeling lighter than I had in months. For the first time since last night's revelation, I had a plan. More importantly, I had the tools to execute it. My phone rang as I was walking to my car. Unknown number. "Hello? Is this Mason Archer?" The voice was nervous, young. "Who's asking?" "My name is Tyler Brooks. I was at your party last night. I think we need to talk." Tyler Brooks. I remembered him vaguely, mid-20s, worked at the gym where Jessa had her membership. He'd been quiet during the party, staying mostly in the background. "What about?" "About what your wife said. About all of us." My grip tightened on the phone. "Where do you want to meet?" An hour later, I was sitting across from Tyler in a coffee shop downtown. He was younger than I'd thought, maybe 25, with the nervous energy of someone carrying a guilty secret. "I didn't know she was married when it started," he said without preamble. "She told me she was divorced, that you were just roommates for financial reasons." "When did it start?" "About 8 months ago. She hired me as a personal trainer, private sessions, things just developed." "And the money?" He flushed. "She said she wanted to help me get my business started. Small loans, she called them. I was supposed to pay her back eventually." "How much?" "Maybe 3,000 total. I kept telling her I'd pay her back, but she said not to worry about it." I leaned back in my chair, processing this information. Jessa hadn't just been paying for hotel rooms and dinners. She'd been subsidizing her lovers' lives, creating financial dependencies that kept them loyal and available. "Tyler, I need you to be completely honest with me. How many others were there?" He looked miserable. "I don't know exact numbers, but she mentioned other trainers, other guys she was helping. I thought I was special, you know? I thought she really cared about me." "Did she ever mention Dennis Sloan?" "The guy from her office? Yeah, she complained about him sometimes. Said he was getting too possessive, wanted her to leave you. She said she wasn't ready for that kind of commitment." The picture was becoming clearer. Jessa hadn't been having random affairs. She'd been running a sophisticated operation, multiple relationships, each one carefully managed and financially leveraged. Dennis thought he was her primary relationship. Tyler and the others thought they were special projects she was investing in. Meanwhile, she was using our joint accounts to fund the entire operation. "Tyler, I'm going to ask you to do something, and I understand if you say no, but I'm filing for divorce, and I need witnesses to testify about Jessa's affairs." "You want me to testify in court?" "I want you to tell the truth. That's all." He was quiet for a long time, staring into his coffee cup. Finally, he nodded. "She lied to me, Mr. Archer. She made me believe I was the only one. If testifying helps you get justice, then yeah, I'll do it." I shook his hand and gave him Patricia's card. "Call her tomorrow. She'll walk you through the process." As I drove home, my phone buzzed with a text from Jessa. "We need to talk. This is getting out of hand." I texted back, "Talk to my lawyer." The war had officially begun. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was having coffee on the back deck when Owen appeared, still in his pajamas and looking like he hadn't slept. "Dad, can we talk?" "Of course. Sit down." He collapsed into the chair across from me, running his hands through his dark hair. At 16, he was already taller than me, with Jessa's eyes but my stubborn jaw. "Mom called me last night," he said. "She's staying at Aunt Tasha's, and she's really upset. She says you threw her out over some misunderstanding." I set down my coffee cup, choosing my words carefully. "What exactly did she tell you?" "That she made a stupid joke at the party, and you took it the wrong way. That you're being vindictive and cruel." He paused. "But I heard what she said, Dad. I was upstairs, but I heard it. And I saw how those guys were looking at her all night." "What do you think about what you heard?" Owen was quiet for a long moment. "I think Mom's been lying to us for a while. Little things, you know? Staying out late, being secretive with her phone, getting defensive when you ask simple questions. I just didn't want to believe it. I'm sorry you have to deal with this, son. I know it's not easy." "Are you really getting divorced?" "Yes. I've already filed the papers." He nodded slowly. "Good. You deserve better than someone who lies to you." "What about you? Your mom wants to make sure you're okay with all this." "I'm 16, not 6. I can see what's happening here." He looked at me directly. "I want to stay with you, Dad. Is that okay?" I felt something loosen in my chest. "More than okay. This is your home, Owen. It always will be." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the neighbors start their Saturday routines. Normal people living normal lives, unaware of the drama unfolding next door. "Dad, there's something else. Mom asked me to talk to you, to try to get you to change your mind about the divorce." "What did you tell her?" "I told her I wouldn't do it, that if she wanted to fix things, she should have thought about that before she cheated on you." I was proud of my son in that moment, 16 years old and already showing more integrity than his mother. My phone rang. Dwayne. "I've got preliminary information on your 3 suspects," he said without preamble. "Can you meet me at Murphy's Bar in an hour?" Murphy's was a dive bar downtown that catered to cops, private investigators, and other people who dealt with the darker side of human nature. Dwayne was already there when I arrived, occupying a corner booth with a beer and a thick folder. "This is interesting reading," he said, sliding the folder across the table. Your wife has expensive taste in men. I opened the folder to find background reports on Dennis, Kevin, and Brad. The information was comprehensive and damning. Dennis Sloan, Dwayne began, married for 12 years to Caitlin Sloan, 2 kids in middle school. But here's the kicker. He's been embezzling from Morrison Industries to fund his lifestyle. Small amounts spread across multiple accounts, but it adds up to about $50,000 over the past year. He's stealing from the company where he and Jessa work. Gets better. Kevin Walsh, your wife's yoga instructor, has a gambling problem, owes money to some very unpleasant people. The payments from Jessa weren't for services rendered. They were keeping him from getting his legs broken. And Brad Morrison? Real estate agent, but barely making ends meet. His business is failing, he's behind on his mortgage, and he's been using the money from Jessa to avoid bankruptcy. I leaned back in the booth, processing this information. So she wasn't just having affairs, she was financially supporting all of them. Looks like it. But here's the really interesting part. Dwayne leaned forward. I don't think any of them knew about the others. Each one believed he was her only extramarital relationship. She was compartmentalizing. Exactly. Dennis thought she was going to leave you for him. Kevin thought she was helping him get back on his feet so they could be together. Brad thought she was investing in his business because she believed in their future. What about Tyler Brooks? The personal trainer? Same pattern. She convinced him she was divorced and just helping him start his fitness business. Kids completely infatuated with her. I closed the folder, my mind racing. Jessa hadn't just been unfaithful. She'd been running a sophisticated emotional and financial manipulation scheme. Each man thought he was special, that their relationship with her was unique and meaningful. Meanwhile, she was using our joint accounts to fund the entire operation. There's more, Dwayne said. I talked to a few people at Morrison Industries. Jessa's been acting strange lately, paranoid about her computer, defensive about her schedule. Her assistant mentioned that she's been getting a lot of personal calls during work hours. From who? All of them, probably. Think about it, Mason. She's juggling 4 or 5 relationships simultaneously, each one requiring constant attention and maintenance. That's a full-time job on top of her actual full-time job. My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. This is Caitlin Sloan, Dennis's wife. We need to talk. I know about your situation with Jessa. I showed the message to Dwayne. He whistled low. Looks like you're not the only one who's figured things out. I texted back, when and where. The response came immediately. Starbucks on 5th Street, 1 hour. I'll be wearing a red scarf. Caitlin Sloan was nothing like I'd expected. She was petite, blonde, and carried herself with the controlled fury of someone who'd been betrayed but wasn't going to collapse. The red scarf was silk, expensive, and matched her lipstick perfectly. Mr. Archer, she said as I approached her table, thank you for meeting me. Call me Mason, and thank you for reaching out. She had a laptop open and several printed documents spread across the table. I've been investigating my husband's behavior for the past month. Imagine my surprise when I discovered he wasn't just having an affair, but that his affair partner was married to someone who might be an ally. What did you find? Hotel receipts, restaurant charges, gifts purchased with our joint credit card, but also bank transfers, cash withdrawals, and payments to what I initially thought were legitimate business expenses. She turned the laptop screen toward me. $53,000 over the past year, Mason. He's been stealing from his employer to fund his relationship with your wife. Are you going to report the embezzlement? Her smile was ice cold. I'm going to do better than that. I'm going to help you destroy both of them. We spent the next hour comparing evidence, cross-referencing dates and amounts, building a comprehensive picture of Dennis and Jessa's affair. What emerged was a pattern of financial fraud that went far beyond simple infidelity. Dennis thinks Jessa is going to leave you for him, Caitlin said. He's been pressuring her to file for divorce, promising to leave me once she's free. He has no idea she's seeing other men. What do you want to do with this information? I want to watch them both burn, she said simply. Dennis destroyed our marriage and stole from his company to do it. Your wife enabled and encouraged him. They both deserve whatever's coming to them. I have a lawyer, I said. Patricia Shin? She's very good at what she does. I know Patricia. She handled my sister's divorce 3 years ago. Absolutely ruthless when she needs to be. We exchanged contact information and agreed to coordinate our efforts. As I was leaving, Caitlin grabbed my arm. Mason, there's something else you should know. Dennis has been talking about confronting you directly. He thinks if he can intimidate you into backing down, Jessa will be free to be with him. Let him try, I said. I spent 20 years in the Army. I'm not easily intimidated. But as I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get much more complicated. Sunday morning brought chaos in the form of Dennis Sloan standing on my front porch at 7 a.m., looking like he'd slept in his car. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive shirt wrinkled, and his eyes had the wild look of a man who'd lost control of his carefully ordered world. I opened the door slowly, keeping the chain lock engaged. "Can I help you, Dennis?" "We need to talk, Mason, man to man." "I don't think we have anything to discuss." "It's about Jessa, about us, about this whole misunderstanding." I almost laughed. Misunderstanding, as if his affair with my wife was some kind of clerical error. "There's no misunderstanding, Dennis. You've been sleeping with my wife and stealing money from your employer to pay for it. That's pretty clear-cut." His face went pale. "How did you know about the embezzlement? I have friends in interesting places. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" "You don't understand," he said, his voice taking on a desperate edge. "Jessa and I are in love. Real love. She was going to leave you anyway. I just accelerated the timeline." "By stealing $50,000 from Morrison Industries?" "That's not... I was going to pay it back." "With what money? Your salary? The money you've been spending on hotel rooms and gifts for my wife?" Dennis's composure cracked completely. "You smug bastard. You think you're so much better than me, don't you? Sitting in your perfect house with your perfect life, never realizing that your wife was dying of boredom." I unlatched the chain and opened the door fully. Dennis was smaller than I'd thought, softer. 20 years of office work versus 20 years of military training. This wouldn't be much of a contest if it came to that. "My wife was dying of boredom," I said calmly. "So she decided to cure it by screwing half the neighborhood and using our joint accounts to pay for the privilege. And you were stupid enough to think you were the only one." "What do you mean, the only one?" "Come on, Dennis, you're not that naive. Kevin Walsh, Brad Morrison, Tyler Brooks. Should I keep going?" The color drained from his face completely. "You're lying." "Am I? Ask Jessa. Ask her about the Venmo payments, the hotel receipts, the carefully scheduled rotation of lovers. Ask her why she never actually filed for divorce, despite promising you she would." Dennis staggered backward as if I'd hit him. "She said, she told me." "She told you what you wanted to hear, just like she told all the others." For a moment, I thought he might collapse right there on my porch. Then anger replaced shock, and his hands clenched into fists. "You're destroying everything," he snarled. "Jessa and I could have been happy together. We could have had a real relationship." "You mean the kind of real relationship where you steal money from your employer and she lies to her husband? That kind of real relationship?" He took a step toward me, and I could see him calculating his chances. I let him see the smile on my face, the kind of smile that had intimidated enemy combatants in 2 war zones. "I wouldn't," I said quietly. "I really wouldn't." Dennis must have seen something in my expression that convinced him violence wasn't the answer. He backed down, but the hatred in his eyes was unmistakable. "This isn't over, Mason." "Actually, it is. Your wife knows about the affair and the embezzlement. My lawyer has documented evidence of both. Morrison Industries will be getting an anonymous tip about their missing money. And Jessa, well, Jessa's about to discover that juggling multiple relationships is a lot harder when everyone knows about everyone else." I closed the door and watched through the window as Dennis stumbled back to his car. He sat behind the wheel for several minutes, probably trying to process the complete collapse of his fantasy. Then he drove away, leaving tire marks on my driveway. My phone rang almost immediately. Jessa. "What did you say to Dennis?" she demanded without preamble. "The truth. Novel concept, I know." "He's completely falling apart, Mason. He came to Tasha's house crying, saying you told him about other men." "What other men?" "Kevin, Brad, Tyler. Should I continue, or do you want to confess to the rest yourself?" Silence on the other end of the line. Then quietly, "How long have you known?" "Since the night you announced it to a room full of people. I just needed time to gather evidence." "Evidence for what?" "The divorce, Jessa. The custody hearing, the fraud investigation. Take your pick." "Fraud? Mason, what are you talking about?" "You used our joint accounts to fund multiple affairs over the course of almost a year. That's called financial fraud, and it's a felony in this state." Another long silence. When she spoke again, her voice was different, calculating. "You can't prove anything. It's all circumstantial. Bank records, Venmo transactions, hotel receipts, testimony from your lovers. That's not circumstantial, Jessa. That's a federal case. Those men won't testify against me. They will when they find out about each other. Dennis already knows. How long do you think it'll take him to contact the others? How long before they realized they were all being played? You bastard. I'm the bastard? I'm not the one who spent a year lying to my spouse while conducting multiple affairs funded by joint marital assets. I want to come home, Mason. We can work this out. We can go to counseling, figure out how to fix this. There's nothing to fix, Jessa. You made your choices. Now you get to live with the consequences. What about the children? What about Riley and Owen? Riley's an adult. She can make her own decisions about her relationship with you. Owen has already made his. He's staying with me. You turned my own son against me. I didn't have to turn him against you. Your behavior did that all by itself. I hung up before she could respond. Almost immediately, my phone buzzed with a text from Caitlin Sloan. Dennis came home an hour ago and confessed everything. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. Thank you for giving me the ammunition I needed. Then another text, this one from Dwayne. Morrison Industries just called the police about missing funds. Someone tipped them off about Dennis. Wasn't me, but I'm not complaining. The dominoes were falling exactly as I'd hoped. Dennis would be arrested for embezzlement, probably by the end of the week. Caitlin would take him for everything in the divorce. And Jessa was about to discover that her carefully constructed web of lies was collapsing around her. My phone rang again. Patricia Shin. Mason, we need to talk. Jessa's attorney just called requesting a meeting. She wants to negotiate. What kind of negotiation? The kind where she admits guilt in exchange for a more lenient settlement. She's scared, Mason. Really scared. Good. She should be. Can you be at my office tomorrow morning at 9? I'll be there. As I hung up, Owen appeared in the kitchen doorway. Dad, is everything okay? I heard yelling. Dennis Sloan paid us a visit. He's not happy about the divorce. Is he going to cause trouble? Not anymore. He's got bigger problems to worry about. Owen nodded, accepting this with the pragmatism of a teenager who'd grown up faster than he should have. Dad, I'm proud of you for standing up to Mom. I know it's not easy. Thanks, son. That means more to me than you know. The house felt different that evening, quieter, but not in a bad way. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like I was home instead of just living in a place where my wife happened to keep her secrets. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new revelations, new consequences for Jessa's choices. But tonight, I was content to sit in my own house with my son upstairs doing homework, planning the next phase of a war I was finally winning. The house always wins. But sometimes you have to fight for it. The meeting at Patricia Shin's office was scheduled for 9 a.m., but Jessa arrived 30 minutes early with her attorney, a nervous-looking man named Robert Chen, who clearly wished he was anywhere else. Through Patricia's conference room window, I could see them huddled together, Jessa gesturing frantically while Chen took notes and occasionally shook his head. She's desperate, Patricia observed, reviewing the files spread across her desk. Chen called me twice yesterday trying to negotiate terms before this meeting even started. What kind of terms? Complete capitulation. She'll admit to the affairs, agree to an uncontested divorce, give you primary custody of Owen, and waive any claim to alimony. In exchange, she wants you to not pursue the fraud charges. What did you tell him? Patricia's smile was predatory. I told him we'd listen to their offer, but that criminal charges are out of our hands since the district attorney makes those decisions. At exactly 9 a.m., we joined Jessa and Chen in the conference room. My wife looked terrible. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her makeup couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes, and she'd lost weight. The stress was eating her alive. Mason, she said as I sat down across from her, thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I didn't respond. Patricia had coached me to let the lawyers do the talking unless directly asked a question. Chen cleared his throat. My client would like to resolve this matter as quickly and amicably as possible. She's prepared to make significant concessions in exchange for discretion. Define discretion, Patricia said. No criminal fraud charges. No public disclosure of the personal matters involved. A quiet, uncontested divorce with sealed records. Patricia slid a document across the table. This is a forensic accounting of joint marital assets over the past year. Your client used approximately $37,000 of marital funds to conduct extramarital affairs. That's felony fraud in this state. Chen reviewed the document, his face growing paler with each page. These are very detailed records. My client is a paralegal with 20 years of experience and military training in intelligence gathering. He's very good at documentation. Jessa finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Mason, please. I know I made mistakes, but we can fix this. We don't have to destroy each other. I looked at her directly for the first time since entering the room. You didn't make mistakes, Jessa. You made choices. For almost a year, you chose to lie to me, steal from our joint accounts, and conduct multiple affairs. Those weren't mistakes. They were deliberate decisions. I was confused, unhappy. You were selfish, I interrupted. You wanted excitement, so you found it. You wanted to feel desired, so you cultivated multiple relationships. You wanted to maintain your lifestyle while funding your affairs, so you used our joint accounts. Every step was calculated. Chen tried to regain control of the conversation. My client is willing to admit fault and accept responsibility for her actions. In exchange for what? Patricia cut him off. Your client committed fraud. She stole marital assets to fund extramarital relationships. She lied under oath when she signed joint tax returns claiming legitimate business expenses that were actually affair-related costs. The district attorney is very interested in this case. This was news to me, but I kept my expression neutral. Patricia was bluffing, but it was a good bluff. Jessa broke down completely. I never meant for it to go this far. It started with Dennis, just one affair, but then I felt so guilty that I convinced myself our marriage was already over. And then Kevin needed help with his gambling debts, and Brad was going to lose his house, and Tyler was so young and sweet. So you decided to save them all, I said. With my money? It wasn't supposed to be permanent. I was going to pay it back. With what money? You spent $37,000 on affairs, Jessa. Your salary after taxes wouldn't cover paying that back for 2 years, assuming you spent nothing on yourself. Chen looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Perhaps we could discuss a payment plan. No payment plan, Patricia said firmly. Full restitution of misused marital funds, plus interest, plus legal fees. Uncontested divorce with Mr. Archer receiving the house, primary custody, and no alimony obligations. Mrs. Archer keeps her retirement accounts and personal property, but waives any claim to Mr. Archer's military pension or future earnings. That's everything, Chen protested. My client would be left with almost nothing. Your client should have thought about that before she decided to fund multiple affairs with marital assets, Patricia replied coldly. Jessa looked at me with desperate eyes. Mason, please, I'm begging you, don't do this to me. I'm not doing anything to you, Jessa. I'm simply holding you accountable for what you did to us. The meeting continued for another hour, but the outcome was inevitable. Jessa had no leverage, no bargaining position, and no choice but to accept our terms. She signed the divorce agreement with shaking hands, tears streaming down her face. As we were leaving, she grabbed my arm. What am I supposed to do now? Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore, I said gently. You're a smart, capable woman with a good job. You'll figure it out. The kids will never forgive me. Maybe not, but that's between you and them. Outside the office building, Patricia and I stood in the parking garage reviewing what had just happened. That was easier than I expected, she admitted. I thought she'd fight harder. She knows she's beaten. Jessa's always been good at reading situations and cutting her losses. What about the criminal charges? I may have oversold our connection to the district attorney. Leave that to me. I have a friend in the DA's office who owes me a favor. My phone buzzed. Text from Dwayne. Dennis Sloan was arrested this morning for embezzlement. Morrison Industries is pressing charges. Thought you'd want to know? I showed the message to Patricia. She smiled. One down, several to go. That evening, I sat on my back deck with a beer, watching the sunset and processing the day's events. 21 years of marriage, ended with signatures on legal documents and the promise of restitution payments. It felt anticlimactic, but also liberating. Owen joined me, carrying his own soda and settling into the chair next to mine. Mom called me, he said. She's pretty upset. I imagine she is. She wanted me to ask you to reconsider the custody arrangement. She says she needs me. What did you tell her? I told her I'm 16, not 6, and I can make my own decisions about where I want to live. He paused. I also told her that needing me isn't the same as being a good mother. That's pretty mature for 16. I learned from watching you handle all this. You never lost your temper, never said anything cruel about her in front of me, never tried to turn me against her. You just handled it. She's still your mother, Owen. I hope someday you can have a relationship with her. Maybe, but not until she stops making excuses and starts taking responsibility. We sat in comfortable silence, father and son, watching the neighborhood settle into evening routines. Normal lives, normal problems, normal families doing normal things. My phone rang. Riley. Dad? I heard about the divorce. Are you okay? I'm fine, sweetheart. Better than fine, actually. I can't believe Mom did all that. I mean, I knew you two were having problems, but I never imagined your mother made some very poor choices. But that doesn't change the fact that she loves you and Owen. Do you really believe that? I considered the question carefully. I believe she loves you in the only way she knows how. Whether that's enough, that's for you to decide. I want to come home next weekend. Is that okay? This is your home, Riley. It always will be. After I hung up, Owen looked at me thoughtfully. You're being very generous about Mom. More generous than she deserves. Maybe. But anger is exhausting, son. I'd rather spend my energy building something new than tearing down something that's already destroyed. What happens now? Now we move forward. You finish high school, Riley finishes college, and I figure out what the second half of my life looks like. Sounds good to me. As we headed inside, I thought about Jessa, probably sitting in some temporary apartment, wondering how her carefully constructed world had collapsed so completely. I felt sorry for her, but not sorry enough to regret my choices. She'd gambled with our family and lost. The house had won, as it always does when you play with marked cards. But for the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about revenge or justice or making anyone pay for their mistakes. I was thinking about tomorrow and the day after that and all the days that would follow. Days without lies, without betrayal, without the constant stress of living with someone who'd turned deception into an art form. The house always wins, but sometimes winning just means being free to start over.